Revealed, how a brave waitress discovered a shocking mafia ambush and saved a millionaire's life. It was just another late night at the Rusty Spoon, where the aroma of coffee mingled with the uncertainty of dreams deferred. Sarah, a 30-year-old waitress, navigated between tables with an infectious smile, masking the weight of her family's mounting bills and unfulfilled aspirations. Every night, she laid out plates of greasy fries and served diner specials, but always felt the pull of a life that was meant for something more, something bigger than the modest diner and its routine clientele. Outside, the luxurious cars parked alongside the curb produced an unsettling contrast to her income that barely scraped by. Her gaze often lingered on Tom, a familiar face among the upscale patrons, endlessly charming and far removed from the challenges of her life. To Sarah, he was a beacon of possibility, a siren call to a world far from the hardships of everyday existence. Yet, beyond her admiration lay a nagging sense of inadequacy, a whisper in her mind that wondered if she would ever be worthy of that sparkle and promise. Struggling with bills, she felt invisible, drowning in a sea of faces that passed her by without a second glance, but on this particular night, her careful routine shattered the moment her eyes caught a flicker of movement in the corner of the diner. A motley group of rough-looking men sat huddled together, their voices low and charged with tension. Sarah's heart raced as snippets of conversation reached her ears, words like mafia ambush and target slashed through the comforting hum of the diner. Panic flickered in her stomach. Was Tom, with his easy laughter and warm eyes, in danger? Her instincts warred against her reality. The thought of confronting danger was foreign to her, a working-class waitress who spent her nights navigating the mundane. What power did she wield against men who seemed like they belonged in a world she'd only seen in movies? As her hands trembled while clearing away empty mugs, her heartbeat quickened, each thud authoritative. She thought of her family. Her parents had sacrificed so much for her to be here. Would they truly want her to sit idly by while a life hung in the balance? Before she knew it, her mind was racing with images of failure and regret. Could she really step into the fray? The diner had bred her to be cautious, to live within her means, to adhere to the rules of a society that often chose to overlook her. But the prospect of not acting, of letting down the one person who could exemplify her hopes, propelled her forward. Her breath quickened, muscles tensed, and a faint realization that she could be more than just a waitress gnawed at her gut. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Sarah inhaled deeply, filling her lungs with courage. She couldn't simply stand and watch a tragedy unfold. Rationality screamed for her to retreat, yet her heart, fueled by her upbringing, by the lessons of honesty and standing up for others, ignited a flame of fierce determination. As she walked closer, shadows loomed larger, revealing men with cold eyes, their intentions cloaked in danger. The stakes escalated before her. A confrontation was imminent. She could feel the critical moment rush upon her, leading to a crossroads where choices defined who she really was. Would she allow fear to dictate her fate, or dare to confront the lurking menace? Each step felt monumental, as though the weight of the world bore down on her shoulders. The clatter of plates and chatter faded into a silent storm. Sarah stood poised to challenge not just the mobsters but her own identity, as thunderous footsteps echoed in the background. In that suspended moment, everything seemed to hang in balance. Sarah's fingertips brushed the worn edge of a serving tray, now a vessel of transformation. She drew upon the fragmented pieces of her identity, fragments forged in the fires of adversity. In a world where she felt invisible, she understood that bravery could indeed carve a space for herself. The men in the corner continued their low murmurs, oblivious to her approach, cloaked in arrogance and confidence that came from a life lived without repercussions. Their body language screamed dominance, and yet she felt an unexpected surge of empowerment coursing through her. The timid waitress was about to morph into a protector, the anxiety that once tethered her heart loosened by the prospect of action. "Call the police," she urged herself, rationality slipping through her fingers as adrenaline took charge. As she turned toward the phone in the back booth, her resolve solidified. She wasn't just another face in the crowd anymore, she was becoming something. The lessons of her upbringing guided her. Her parents hadn't raised a coward but a woman capable of change. But then doubt seeped in again. What if they turned their malice toward her? Images of the diner, her life, everything she had worked for flashed before her. It was all so fragile. However, the thought of Tom in harm's way ignited a smoldering fire. His laughter, those stolen moments of joy, were worth defending. Just then, his eyes met hers from across the room, an unspoken connection sparking hope. She hesitated for a breathless second, then her hands shook off doubt. It was all or nothing now. She stepped forward, adrenaline sharpening her gaze as she approached the group. With a steadying breath, she cleared her throat, her voice emerging steadier than she felt. "Excuse me, gentlemen," she said, startling them. Their hard eyes turned toward her, assessing and bemused. "I think you should leave. Now." The shock that rippled through the mobsters was palpable. Shock turned to anger, but she stood her ground. Sarah felt the weight of the diner upon her, a family of employees and patrons, a community intertwined in moments small and significant. The stakes skyrocketed, her heart thundered in her chest. "What did you say?" One of the men sneered, a twisted grin surfacing on his face. "I said," Sarah pressed, her voice gaining volume, "you need to leave. You're not welcome here." Time stretched, silence enveloped the diner like a thick fog. Every breath she took felt like an act of rebellion. She could feel Tom watching, his eyes wide, an anchor for her escalating determination. As the seconds dragged on, Sarah felt the storm of their stares unleash a flood of indignation within her. Confronting the danger wasn't simply about Tom, it was a reclamation of her identity. The laughter from deep within the group faded into their growing incredulity. For the first time, she noticed how they looked slightly unsure under the glare of her defiance. That flicker of uncertainty fueled her momentum. She was not merely waiting to serve, she was demanding respect, something she had always withheld from herself. Moments later, one of the men stood, a mixture of confusion and dark fury radiating from him. "You're brave, little girl. But you have no idea who you're talking to." She could feel the palpable threat in the air, but instead of shrinking back, she leaned into her newfound strength. The contrast between her quiet past and this powerful moment unfurled into clarity. She couldn't stride away now. "Maybe I don't," she said, chin lifted. "But every life here matters, mine, Tom's, everyone's. That's enough for me." As the man stepped forward, tension sharpened like a knife. The ensuing confrontation would chart a future she had never envisioned. Deep within, she felt something shift. She had faced fear and emerged stronger. The alignment of her purpose began to crystallize, but there was no way to know whether it would protect her or leave her exposed. With the rhythm of her heartbeat thrumming in her ears, she braced for the reckoning. This was only the beginning of a defining moment. What would she unleash in pursuit of her truth? The words hung heavy in the air, a prelude to chaos. What would happen next? The atmosphere shifted as the man loomed closer, an embodiment of menace. Sarah's breath quickened, yet beneath the surface terror bubbling within her, a steely resolve began to root. She had never envisioned herself as a champion, yet here she stood, defying everything that had ever held her back. The magic of that rare moment of confrontation ignited a deeper introspection, thrusting her to reckon with her long-buried fears and insecurities. She noticed how the other patrons of the diner leaned slightly back, eyes darting from her to the intruders, unsure whether to intervene or stay silent. There was something powerful about being at the center of their attention, an unusual sense of pooled strength among her peers who had been silent observers for far too long. Where had this voice come from? The lineage of all the trials, all those moments she had felt small, had propelled her into this very instant. Recognizing the flow of her own narrative was an exhilarating revelation. The man who had stepped forward was no longer merely an antagonist, he was a manifestation of every man who had ever dismissed her, every person who had laughed at her dreams or tried to undermine her sense of self-worth. She could feel the weight of her history pressing upon her as she refused to back down. "You may think you intimidate me," she said, her voice steady despite the rapid beating of her heart. "But I know what I stand for." Confidence surged through her, amplified by the solidarity she could feel from the others in the room. She wondered if, perhaps for the first time, she was not the only one who had felt pinned beneath the weight of someone else's supremacy. Perhaps tonight, walls would begin to crumble, not just the ones within her, but around everyone trapped by imposed limitations. Suddenly, the diner door swung open with a clang, and a figure stepped inside with urgency. A familiar sense of dread coiled in her stomach. It was Jax, the local strongman with ties to the criminals lurking in the corner. "What is going on here?" he thundered, scanning the tense atmosphere. The way his gaze shifted between her and the mobsters felt like a duel itself, fraught with suspense and uncertainty. Sarah instinctively squared her shoulders, bracing against this new wave of climbing tension. The question reverberated within her: what was she even doing? In this moment, she could either pick a side or take one step backward, relinquishing her newfound dominion. Did she dare to involve herself further, risk everything for someone else's safety? But she had already ventured too far to pull back now. "You're not welcome in this diner, and you need to leave," she repeated, her voice echoing in the uneasy silence. The act of voicing her resolution felt monumental, compared to the whispers of self-doubt that once plagued her. As she locked eyes with Jax, searching for the flicker of understanding perhaps buried within him, she took a step into the unknown. Every ounce of innate fear receded, replaced by the clarity of her choice. Time relented for just a brief heartbeat. Jax looked between her and the mobsters, and in the flicker of thought that crossed his face, Sarah felt a connection. It was as if the absurdity of the entire scenario momentarily halted the usual dynamics of power. Decisions were looming like dark clouds above them, ready to burst. Would Jax side with her, or would he reinforce the intimidation that had bound her for years? A knot of anticipation churned in her stomach, catalyzing both anxiety and fierce hope. With each second that passed, the tension escalated, and the reality of her standing in the diner shattered any remaining hesitancy she had felt just moments ago. Beneath that heavy sphere of confrontation, a new possibility stirred in her, one that could pivot her life into uncharted territory. In what way would she embrace this moment? But before answers could take shape, the echo of fate spoke. It would not be long before she discovered the true cost of her bravery. Would it bring her the freedom she sought, or suffocate her beneath its weight? As uncertainty hung in the air, Sarah prepared for the next moves in a game none of them truly controlled. Courage had set her on this path, but clarity was about to reveal either destiny or disaster. What lay ahead was veiled from her sight, but its approach resonated with unavoidable intensity. She had opened the door, and fate was eager to step through. In the charged silence of the diner, every heartbeat felt amplified, each breath tethering Sarah closer to her pivotal decision. The shadows of doubt flickered in her mind but quickly dissipated, for she had chosen to stand her ground. Jax was not just another obstacle, he was a channel through which all her past fears flowed, and the key that could either lock her into her old life of passivity or break the shackles that bound her. As her fingers trembled on the edge of the table, she could feel the eyes of the other patrons on her, a heavy gaze that tingled with both fear and anticipation. The idea that they were expecting something from her, that they believed in her capacity to inspire change, ignited her resolve further. The reflection of her silent battles, her previously unacknowledged potential, shimmered within their collective gaze. Jax hesitated before the tension in the room became unbearable. In that moment of stillness, Sarah recalled the countless times she had shrunk back under the weight of disapproval and dismissiveness, when she had heard the words "you can't," and internalized them. But now, she was resolute. Her sense of purpose swelled within her like a tide, reshaping the landscape of her reality. "Everyone needs to leave now," Jax finally said, but his voice wavered just enough for Sarah to detect the undercurrent of uncertainty. Perhaps there was a chance, she thought, that he might be swayed tonight. "You'll let them go?" she pressed, tilting her chin defiantly. The room seemed to hold its breath, the mere act of standing against him felt like a dare to fate. Either she would shatter her own limitations, or they would consume her anew, but she could already feel the cracks in her old self beginning to widen. "Sarah," Jax began, but the weight of her defiance cut him off. "No. I won't allow you to intimidate us anymore. This is our space, and your presence doesn't define our reality." Her voice surged with conviction, becoming a force she never knew she possessed. She was not speaking to Jax but to every distorted narrative that had circled around her. Jax's scowl deepened, and the men behind him shifted, sensing that they might lose their grip on the situation. The uncertainty had morphed into an opportunity she had never anticipated. In the midst of the escalating standoff, an unexpected realization coursed through her like adrenaline. It was about more than just this diner. This moment could signify a transformation not just for her, but perhaps for everyone watching. Each patron represented a silent witness to the influencers in their lives that had kept them from stepping forward. Perhaps there was a way to turn this moment into a beacon rather than a battle. "Step away from the door," she commanded, eyes steady on Jax, whose surprise momentarily faltered his grimace. The primal urge to retreat pressed against her, but she would not back down. "You want to show us your power? Leave and don't look back. Nothing you do tonight makes you a man." A ripple of murmurs ignited among the diners, whispers dripping with a newfound courage. They rallied behind her, sharing a silent pact that perhaps they could uncover their own strengths together, the very unity she had yearned for in her own life. But as Jax contemplated the challenge, an ominous tension thickened the air. Would he declare war against her or surprise her with an unexpected alliance? In her eager anticipation of his response, a flicker of doubt slipped in. Was she prepared to deal with the consequences of her defiance if it provoked a monster beneath Jax's rugged exterior? As she swallowed back the rising tide of anxiety, she prepared herself for whatever ugly truth lay behind his unyielding gaze. If this was a test, Sarah refused to fail now. She had taken the leap into uncharted territory, and she was determined to navigate through it. Jax's lips twisted into a grim smile, finally revealing his decision. What he said next would either solidify her growing strength or plunge her into chaos. The certainty of repercussions loomed ahead, dark and foreboding. What repercussions awaited her for her moment of courage? Jax leaned forward slightly, his eyes narrowing as he weighed his options. The silence stretched into an agonizing expanse, filling Sarah with a blend of adrenaline and uncertainty. She felt the energy in the room shift, the air thickening with the expectation of what was to come. Was this moment an ending or just the beginning? "Get everyone out," he finally said, a low growl punctuating his words. "But I won't leave without what I came for." The dangerous glint in his eyes promised that he wouldn't take her command lightly. She was aware of how deeply he could retaliate. Their standoff revealed his true nature. She saw the cracks in his bravado, the flickers of desperation beneath the surface of his bravado. Jax was not the unyielding figure he attempted to portray, he was a man trapped by his own choices, and Sarah became suddenly aware of how much power she held in this moment. Even so, the weight of responsibility pressed down upon her. The diners slowly began to shuffle out, fear evident in their hurried movements, but they cast her lingering glances of appreciation, moments that affirmed she was not alone in this fight. The act of standing her ground did not offer mere solace, it catalyzed an awakening within each of them. "Your move, Jax," she challenged, her voice steady. "Do you choose fear or respect?" He straightened up, the moment of indecision slipping away as he leaned into his role of authority. "Nice speech, but it doesn't change the fact that I'm here for my due." Sarah felt a flicker of anger wash over her. How could he dismiss the volley of courage she had thrown at him? Yet, beneath the fury, a curiosity emerged. A part of her wanted to learn more about his struggles, to understand how he had intertwined his life with intimidation and threats. "Who are you really?" The question spilled from her lips before she could stop it, surprising even herself. It was uncalculated but essential, a thread to unravel the fabric of his confidence. "Just a man trying to survive in a world that doesn't care," he replied tersely, yet she caught a glimpse of vulnerability behind his bravado. It was enough to let her know he was not just a villain, He was a product of his environment, as much a victim of circumstance as anyone else in that diner. Her heart hammered in her chest as she considered her next words carefully. Surviving doesn't have to mean terrorizing others, Jax. You have the power to choose differently. At that moment, she realized that this confrontation was not merely about winning a battle of wills. It was about bridging the chasm between a possible future of fear and one fueled by courage. There was a pathway to redemption, even for him, if he chose to embrace it. His expression shifted, uncertainty creeping across his features as he pondered her challenge. The bustling diner, now almost empty, echoed with the weight of unspoken revelations and possible transformations that in the throes of their standoff. Sarah understood something profound. Her resilience didn't just serve her own narrative, it had the potential to extend beyond herself as well. And as Jax struggled internally, she recognized her role. She was not merely defending herself. She was offering him a lifeline. The echoes of their exchange hung heavy in the air, the tangible tension now imbued with an unexpected allure of vulnerability and change. Before she could reflect further on the depths of her own conviction, Jax's face shifted again, his grimace tightening into determination. You want to talk choices? Let's make this interesting. Sarah inhaled sharply, her breath trembling in anticipation. This was no idle threat, it signaled a pivotal moment that could spiral out of control. How far would he take this? The stakes were rising, and the outcome felt increasingly precarious in that fleeting moment. As she stood her ground against the possible storm brewing within him, she understood that her journey was evolving into something much larger than herself. It was a reckoning, a negotiation for compassion in a world that craved power over empathy. The question now remained, would Jax embrace the opportunity for change, or would he descend further into chaos? As the air thickened with potentiality, Sarah braced herself, preparing for the unexpected path that lay ahead. What choice would she ultimately be forced to make? A charged silence hung between them, punctuated only by the distant clatter of cutlery and muffled voices fading away from the diner. Sarah clutched the edge of the counter, her knuckles white. The beautiful, chaotic tapestry of life in the diner had unraveled, leaving only her and Jax standing at the center of a storm that threatened to engulf them both. What were you suggesting? She finally asked, her voice steady but laced with caution. Jax's smirk had a menacing edge, sharpening the air around them. He stepped closer, reducing the distance that separated them. Let's wager, shall we? A game. You prove to me you can stand your ground, I'll reconsider my approach. But if I win? His voice trailed off, allowing the implication to flood the space between them. He leaned back slightly, his posture shifting from aggression to a more relaxed, almost theatrical stance. Go on, she encouraged, sensing a trap but unwilling to back down. The words fell from her lips before she had fully processed the potential consequences. Every instinct screamed caution, yet something deeper compelled her to engage. Perhaps it was the glimmer of hope for Jax's redemption intertwining with her own growth. If you lose, I get what I want. No questions asked. You'll give me access to what was promised. His eyes sparkled with a mixture of challenge and something more unpredictable. There was bravado, yes, but behind it, Sarah detected a flicker of genuine intrigue, a desire for a different outcome. How do I know you'll honor your word? She shot back, her heart racing at the audacity of the suggestion. More than just her well-being was at stake, she felt herself standing upon an invisible precipice, balancing hope with trepidation. Trust me, you'll know, he replied, raising an eyebrow, an enigmatic smirk curling on his lips. It was a risk, one that sent her mind racing with calculations of potential loss against the backdrop of a chance for change. Against every warning echoing in her mind, Sarah felt a powerful surge of determination. This could be the moment that defined not just her role in this complicated scenario but also Jax's. Fine, she finally declared, her heart pounding as she met his gaze, unwilling to betray her inner resolve. What are the stakes, Jax? What does winning and losing look like? He paused, considering her words. If you win, I'll step back. No repercussions. Just let me walk away. If I win, you help me with my plans, however they unfold. This wasn't about just survival anymore, it was a deadly dance on the tightrope of her principles and his desperation. She could see what this gamble meant for him, a final plea for agency amidst the chaos he had created. Okay, she breathed out, gripping the counter harder as she leaned forward, matching his intensity. Let us make it a fair game. One question each, and what you reveal must be the truth. Jack's smirk faded, replaced by a cautious respect that hollowed the earlier bravado. I can work with that. The stakes were now set, and Sarah felt the pulse of the diner around them, a distant heartbeat reflecting her inner tumult. She had entered a realm far beyond mere survival. The confrontation was evolving into a profound interrogation of character theirs intertwined. His question abruptly broke through her musings, shrouded in the gravity of the moment. Why do you care so much about my choices? He pressed, voice low and sincere. The vulnerability in his tone sent a ripple through her steadfastness, forcing her to confront her own deep-seated motivations. That's for me to answer later, she said, masking the emotional unraveling that fought to emerge. Your turn. As Jax prepared for his question, tension coiled tighter within her. This wasn't merely a gamble, it was a reflection of who they both were becoming. The unexpected connection, a flawed mirror, was both exhilarating and frightening. With his next words, they would tip the scales toward clarity or confusion. What would they reveal about each other, and how would that shape the paths before them? The moment hung in balance, and all Sarah could do was wait, her heart thundering as the possibilities rushed in. What would he choose to expose, and how would it alter the trajectory of both their lives? The moment stretched like taffy, thick with anticipation and scarred honesty. Jax's expression shifted, his amusement dimming to serious contemplation. Was he about to reveal a fragment of his true self, or merely hide behind another elaborate facade? The intensity of the diner faded into a blurry backdrop, leaving only them warriors on emotional battlegrounds, each seeking to wield power yet vulnerable to the weight of their choices. Okay, let us see, he began, narrowing his eyes as he studied her with the cunning of a predator assessing its prey. What's the biggest mistake you've made in your life, and what did it teach you? The question struck Sarah like a bolt of lightning. It demanded introspection and honesty, two elements she had carefully guarded. Yet, this was a game, an opening, and her resolve was a sword forged for battle. She took a deep breath, laced with the scent of fried onions and a lingering sense of urgency. Relying on people I shouldn't have, she finally admitted, the vulnerability spilling over like a monsoon. I thought I could trust everyone who smiled. That being kind would always be reciprocated. But kindness can be misused, and I learned that the hard way. A silence hung between them, and Jax didn't flinch. Instead, he leaned in slightly, fingers drumming on the counter, a curious spark igniting behind his eyes. So you shut others out now? Not shut out, just cautious, she countered, her voice firm despite the tremor in her heart. With each revelation, she felt less burdened, as if shedding layers of armor previously worn. His laugh rang out, slightly dark but not devoid of understanding. Isn't that a contradiction? You're still offering trust in this very moment. Why take a risk with me? There was a deep challenge in his question, forcing her to confront the duality of her instincts. Could it be that beyond the storm brewing inside her, there lay a yearning for connection? Because I see potential in you that you refuse to acknowledge, she shot back, surprised by the strength in her own words. You're not just a shadow of what you could be. You can choose differently. Jax's hesitation lasted only seconds, yet the weight of it felt monumental. Sarah could almost hear the wheels turning in his mind, calculations, contemplation, the grating essence of confrontation and connection entwined. Maybe I'll regret this later, he muttered, his tone almost self-deprecating. But what if I told you I've made my own mistakes, too? Choices that led me here. The stakes elevated, her heart quaked with the vibrating energy of his confession, pulling her closer to the edge of clarity she inched towards. Then tell me, Jax. Show me who you really are beneath this game. In an instant, the well-crafted bravado began to strip away, revealing raw vulnerability. There was a time I cared about nothing but power, he confessed, his voice a low rumble, until I realized it came at a cost my humanity. This game serves two purposes: it reflects who I was and tests who I could become. His self-revelation struck her, resonating with a depth she hadn't anticipated. Here was Jax, a man of contradictions, both shadow and potential, a vulnerability hiding beneath the layers of bravado that defined him. The revelation hung in the air like a sharp blade, slicing through the pretense that had framed their conversations. Sarah leaned closer, compelled by the need to act on this newfound truth. The question is, Jax, do you want to change? Are you willing to put in the work? Because that is something I can help with. I'll consider it, he replied, though the playful smirk barely hid the turmoil underneath. More than ever, the resonance of their exchange palpitated with electricity, a catalyst igniting paths toward transformation. Yet, as much as clarity began to seep in, doubt lingered in the corners of her mind. How do we move forward? She pressed, her thoughts racing ahead to the implications of their shared moment. Jax considered her question, glancing away as if deep in thought, then met her gaze with an intensity that hinted at shifting currents. That depends on who we decide to be next. The air thickened with possibility, anticipation boiling just below the surface. They stood at a fork, a labyrinthine path of choices laid out before them. What would they uncover in their gamble, and how would those choices resonate in the lives they sought to shape? With each tick of the clock in the diner, both understood that the next question would not only alter their trajectories but could very well shake the foundations of their very beings. As Sarah leaned into the moment, ready to forge ahead into uncertain territory, the thrill of discovery loomed large on the horizon, waiting to be embraced. Sarah could feel the air buzz with expectation, a savory tension as thick as the diner's pancake syrup. The question loomed before them like an uncharted territory, a crossroad steeped in unmade choices and unclaimed futures. She steadied her breath, understanding that the next step could either propel or shatter them. What do you want, Jax? She asked, her voice as steady as she could muster. What do you truly want? His brow furrowed, each line carved with doubt. I want to be understood, I guess, he finally said, a hint of vulnerability slipping through the cracks of his bravado. But understanding comes at a cost. Understanding what? Sarah pressed, feeling the heat of the moment pulse around them, like waves crashing against a cliff. Understanding who I am, who we are, really. Not just the facades we wear, he replied, the weight of his confession simmering just beneath the surface. But it's scary. What if the truth is more than we can handle? In that instant, Sarah sensed an opportunity, both a gift and a challenge. She had spent her life grappling with her own truths, becoming adept at revealing layers hidden beneath worn-out smiles. Perhaps this was not only about Jax, but about their potential to shape one another. Fear can either paralyze or propel us, she offered. It's how we choose to engage with it that defines us. The turbulent thoughts within Jax swirled visibly, his jaw tensed as he wrestled with her words. So what do you propose? A leap of faith into the unknown? What if it's more of a measured step? Sarah suggested, her heart racing. One where we examine what we truly want. Together. Their eyes locked, and she felt a surge of conviction. The revelation wasn't merely about acknowledging mutual fears, it was about reframing their journeys, shaping them through honesty and vulnerability. I've always felt like I'm playing a role, Jax admitted, the hardened edges of his demeanor softening just a bit. Like I'm running a con, even when I don't want to be. Then let us strip away the gimmicks, the elaborate constructs, Sarah urged, her own voice revealing urgency now. Why not confront the truths you've avoided? Each heartbeat echoed with a mixture of hope and apprehension. Their connection had grown beyond mere facades, it was emerging into something profound, perhaps even life-altering. Jax looked down at his hands, fingers fidgeting on the counter, telltale signs of inner conflict. Sarah seized the moment, bridging the distance wrought by uncertainty. You don't have to do this alone. We can discover who we really are while we're discovering who we can be with each other. For a flicker of time, the world outside the diner faded completely. The warmth of late-night lights illuminated their shared space, offering hope instead of fear. But even in that moment of clarity, an undercurrent of realization struck Sarah. What was this synergy blossoming between them? What if understanding means sacrificing the person we think we need to be? He questioned, an unsteady edge threading through his voice. That part exists only if we let it, she replied firmly, nudging him closer to defying his limits. It's a choice. You decide what stays and what goes. Suddenly a waitress passed their booth with a tray of steaming plates, blurring the zone of intimacy they had crafted. Sarah realized how easily distractions could ripple in when the stakes felt so high. Her determination surged, they needed to rise above the swirling uncertainty. Jax, we stand on the brink of something remarkable. Let us not waste this chance, she implored, feeling the fervor pushing against the walls of her own guarded resolve. A spark ignited in his eyes, a silent promise shimmering in the air. All right, he said softly, though solidly. Let us dig deeper and figure this out. But know this, I won't bow down without a fight. As the statement settled between them, anticipation excited her pulse, yet a chill of doubt shivered through Sarah's thoughts. Would they truly uncover the truths lurking in their shadows? The stakes had been raised, and with the prospect of personal revelations loomed larger still. In deciding to move forward, they would stumble upon not just the foundations of who they were becoming, but perhaps some haunting truths about themselves they weren't yet ready to confront. Amidst the din of clattering plates and laughter fading into the background, Sarah's heart hammered, a realization emerging that the journey they embarked upon might lead them beyond their deepest fears into realms of authenticity they could only begin to imagine. The road ahead held potential, but not without its challenges. As the diner buzzed with life, their pact hung precariously in the balance, a commitment to navigate the dark recesses within themselves. Would they rise as allies or get lost in the maze of their choices? With that realization anchored firmly in her mind, Sarah braced for the unveiling that lay ahead. The journey was just beginning, and the shadows might prove as enlightening as they were daunting. The weight of the pact hung heavily between them, a silent promise not yet crystallized. Sarah realized that the diner wasn't merely a backdrop for their conversation, it was a crucible for change. It intensified her commitment to confront what lay beneath their surfaces, both hers and Jax's. So, where do we start? Jax asked, his tone shifting as if he were suddenly aware of the delicate nature of their exchange. Let us reflect on those masks we mentioned, Sarah proposed. What's behind yours, Jax? What is it that you fear revealing? He hesitated, the moment stretching like taffy in their hands. I've been playing this tough guy persona, like a character in a bad movie. But the reality? I'm terrified of being seen as weak. Weak has never been an option. Sarah nodded, recognizing the vulnerability in his admission. Strength comes in many forms, she interjected gently. I've spent too much time abandoning my own truths to fit a mold. Let us explore what strength means for you without the embellishments. The flickering light from the diner shined through patterns across the table, illuminating both their faces in a way that felt almost theatrical. The vulnerability they risked exposing could open doors or dismantle walls. What if we unveil one truth tonight? Sarah suggested, feeling a wild thrill shoot through her. One action we can take that aligns with who we really are. Jax swallowed hard, uncertainty dancing in his eyes. What would that even look like? Let us define a moment that makes you confront this facade, she proposed, her voice steady. An instance that will test your beliefs about strength. He leaned back, his expression flipping between contemplation and dread. With a sigh, he finally asked, would confronting my father qualify? The mention of his father twisted Sarah's gut. Jax's relationship with the man loomed large and complicated, a potential minefield of unresolved issues. Only if you're ready. But remember, you have the power to frame this encounter. Jax released a slow breath, as if acknowledging the stakes of such an engagement. Yeah, I guess it's about taking back control instead of letting him define who I am. Exactly, she encouraged, feeling the embers of determination sparking anew in him. She found herself drawn to her own reflection in this journey as well, the mirror of personal growth reflected back at her, igniting an unexpected self-discovery. What about you? Jax asked, his gaze locking onto hers. What truth would you confront? The air shimmered with an electrifying charge as Sarah considered the question. She felt the urge to share her struggles but also sensed the weight of responsibility in that decision. For me, it's about letting go of the past. I've clung to the idea of being perfect, the expectations that come with it. Running from the past just makes the shadows even bigger. His insight felt like a jolt of electricity, and Sarah found her heart rate quicken. Then let us make a pact, right here, she said, gripping the edge of the table for anchor. We confront one truth tonight, and we dig deeper from there. Okay, he nodded, a mix of enthusiasm and fear playing across his features. But we shouldn't stop there. I want us to challenge the truths we discover going forward. Each time we meet, we should tackle something. Deal? Deal, she affirmed, invigorated by their mutual commitment. In that moment, the diner transformed from a mere establishment to a sacred ground for revelations. However, as the conversation deepened, a creeping doubt snaked through her mind. What if the revelations they unearthed dashed their growing bond, exposing flaws they weren't ready to face? Jax's phone buzzed on the table, momentarily breaking the intensity. He glanced at it, worry etching his face. I need to take this, he muttered, rising abruptly from his seat, the earlier open atmosphere now shattering under the weight of an unseen tension. As he stepped outside, Sarah felt an unsettling wave crash over her. A sense of foreboding bloomed within. What if he was trying to sever their connection? Or worse, what if the truth he had to confront was too much for either of them? She leaned against the cool table, listening to her heart's rapid pace. It was not just the uncertainty of what Jax would face, but also her own lingering fears about delving into the unknown beyond this diner booth. Then, watching Jax's silhouette flickering through the glass door, an instinctive resolve crystallized. Whatever awaited them, be it solace or disillusionment, they would face it together or unravel trying. And as Sarah sat with her swirling mind, grappling with the implications of this pact, a new question crystallized with staggering intensity: would courage be the lifeline binding them, or would it ignite fractures they had yet to uncover? The night felt charged with a new unpredictability. The revelation of what lay outside, waiting to confront them both, loomed on the horizon, holding the promise of transformation or collapse. Would they emerge as allies in their truths, or would the darkness of their histories tear them apart? With her heart pounding in her chest and thoughts swirling in a tempest of emotion, Sarah sat in the diner, contemplating the weight of her choices. She felt a profound shift within, a recognition that she was no longer just a waitress at the Rusty Spoon but an emerging advocate for herself, daring to peel back the layers of fear that had constrained her for so long. Through her confrontation with Jax and the mob, she had unearthed a strength she had never known resided within her. Meanwhile, Jax returned, his expression echoing the battle of introspection that had just taken place. The tension from their earlier confrontation lingered in the air, charged with both apprehension and anticipation. She was acutely aware that they stood at a critical juncture, a crossroads that could define not just their fates but the very essence of who they aspired to become. Are you ready for this? Jax asked, his voice steadier this time, grounded by the revelations they had already shared. His question hung palpably between them, an invitation to face the truths they would unearth together. More than ever, Sarah replied, her confidence buoyed by the journey they had embarked upon. Let us dive deep. In that moment, they set the stage for exploration, not just of their personal fears but of the layers they had carefully constructed. The diner, with its familiar ambience of clattering dishes and the scent of coffee, transformed into their shared space of discovery, where vulnerability and strength intertwined. Let us tackle the biggest hurdles first, Jax suggested. He sat down across from her, his body language radiating renewed purpose. What about your past? What do you fear letting go of the most? Expectations, Sarah admitted, her voice steady. I've spent my life trying to fit into a mold my family's hopes, society's standards. It's suffocating. As the words left her lips, she felt as if she had already taken a step toward liberation. A weight lifted from her shoulders, replaced with a sense of clarity. Let us break that, Jax encouraged. What if you redefine what success looks like for you? As hard as it seems, I want to embrace imperfection, Sarah replied, a single tear escaping her eye. I don't have to achieve everything to be worthy. That's a powerful choice, Jack said, his admiration evident. He was no longer just a strongman seeking control, he had transformed into a confidant on this journey of self-discovery. As Sarah shared her vulnerability, she found Jack's attentive gaze allowing her to peel back layers of self-doubt. What about you? She prompted, eager to reciprocate the openness. What do you fear uncovering? His hesitation was palpable, but the sincerity of her inquiry drew him forth. Not living up to the expectations of my father, he confessed, a tremor lacing his words. And, maybe, losing my edge. I've built myself as a man who commands respect. But what if that's not who I want to be? In that moment, Sarah recognized the struggle that mirrored her own, the incessant pressure to conform to other people's beliefs about who they should be. You're not alone in this battle, she said quietly, feeling an unexpected bond threading between them. With uncertainty still hovering, they pressed further. They exchanged stories of dreams unfulfilled and boundaries previously unchallenged, cathartic confessions that watered the seeds of their burgeoning self-awareness. Days turned into weeks as Sarah and Jax met regularly in the diner, reshaping their identities while intertwining their narratives of courage. Sarah's transformations were tangible. She found the strength to navigate her relationships with her family, speaking her truth unapologetically. New paths emerged as she cultivated her passions, articulating dreams buried beneath the weight of expectations. Jax, too, confronted his past as a struggle for power, gradually unraveling the need to control, and embracing connection instead. Their conversations began to shift toward their ambitions, both personal and professional. Inspired by newfound confidence, Sarah sought a promotion at the diner, finally approaching her manager with the conviction of self-worth. To her surprise, she received not just acknowledgement but a leadership role, mentoring newer waitstaff, a standing she had once deemed impossible. Meanwhile, Jax began volunteering in community programs, using his influence to lift others rather than intimidate. He found fulfillment in empowering those often overlooked, cementing his position as a mentor, a respected role unmarked by intimidation. The validation he craved no longer depended on fear but rather on relationships built on trust. Ultimately, the cracks that had once divided them solidified into resilience. Sarah and Jax emerged not just as champions of their own narratives but as advocates for each other's growth. The diner still served as their backdrop, yet its significance evolved. In 3 months, they returned to the diner one evening, a place that once felt like an anchor to their past selves. This time, they arrived as authors of their own stories, courageous and resolute. They could see how far they had come from that fateful night of confrontation. I'm proud of us, Jack said, raising a glass of soda in celebratory recognition of their journey. Me too, Sarah beamed, recognizing the strength that had flourished from their vulnerability. In this pivotal moment, she realized the vision she once held, a life more resplendent than any dim corner of a diner. Empowered by the courage of their choices and the authenticity of their connection, they had both transcended their pasts and embraced possibilities anew. They had not only achieved the clarity they sought but had transformed into versions of themselves that reflected their true strengths. As they clinked their glasses together, Sarah felt a deep satisfaction, a well-deserved pride. They were no longer bound by outdated narratives, they had conquered their internal battles, their future unfolded before them, waiting to be written with bold strokes of courage and resilience, ready for new worlds to explore. You need to subscribe now to join Sarah and Jax on their next emotional journey toward personal growth. Leave a like now to support their incredible transformation and help spread this story to those who need inspiration. Comment your thoughts and theories about Sarah and Jax's journey. What did you love the most? Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear these powerful messages. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the urgency of these moments. Don't wait even one more second to share.